Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another Women of Horror Spotlight. Today, I have with us, she's an author. She's also a horror scholar, and she also teaches horror writing as well. It's a jack of all trades. Or I should say, Jane of all trades. I have with us Cassandra O'Sullivan Thatcher. I did it right? I said it right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
It's a mouthful.
Yes. And she has a book that just released in March, and it's called Darkness, There, But Something More. Cassandra, welcome to the Horror Room. Look at that cover. It's right there.
It's beautiful. I love it.
It is. All right, so tell us a little bit about Darkness, There, But Something More.
Sure. Well, so first of all, before I get right into that, I just want to say that, so probably like many writers, many of your guests here, writing has always been this thing that I've wanted to do, and I've done it, and I've tried, and it hasn't worked out. And so my whole life, I always wanted to get a book published, and then it didn't work. I went into academia. I was a high school English teacher for a number of years. Then I decided, I should get my doctorate, so I became an English professor. And along the way, I kind of stopped being a creative writer. But then during the pandemic, I felt like many people did, that void, this emptiness, and I started getting hit with ideas for what eventually became my first actually published book. And I realized, it hit me one day that, oh my gosh, I need to write this book, but also first I need to get better as a writer. And so I entered an MFA program, and anyway, and here we are. So about this book, my main character is an Edgar Allan Poe scholar and also a college English professor. Where did I get that idea? But anyway, she's had some tough things. She actually lives in Baltimore at the beginning of the book, so maybe you've seen it around sometime. Yeah, I don't know. And so she loses a baby. She goes through a divorce, darkness, and decides to get a fresh start by taking a position. She had been a tenured professor, but she takes a position as a visiting professor at her alma mater. So in a way, is it really a fresh start? Not exactly. She's revisiting some territory. And while she's there, things are looking up for her. She had heard about the job because of her old English professor who had continued to be a friend to her. And anyway, she's there. Things are going better. She's feeling some hope. That's something more. And then one day, one of her students she's really close with goes missing, ends up dead. And Marissa, my main character, is drawn into the investigation. And during that experience, she starts thinking a lot about things that happened when she was in college at Blackthorn University. And so I have a dual timeline. There's a lot of stuff I'm not going to tell you because there are some twists and turns that I don't want to spoil. But one thing about this book is that it's a dual timeline where we have Marissa in the present day as an English professor, and then the other timeline is Marissa in the late 90s as a college student pledging a sorority. So sorority pledging and sorority hazing are both covered in this book. And there's a lot of something more in here. So that's a quick nutshell.
Now, as an author, to have two different timelines in a book and to go back and forth, is that tough to do?
Well, I think that from the early ideas when I started with this, I kept for a while like, no, I'm not a creative writer anymore. That's not working out. Let me focus on my writing intervention research stuff. Which is so not as fun, by the way. And so for me, I knew early on that I wanted to do this sorority thing, but I also knew that I needed to delve into her past. So an interesting thing, and I tried it different ways and finally settled on this, is that in our present timeline, Marissa is a first-person narrator. In the past timeline, we have a third-person narrator. Marissa is just a character. She's the main character, the focal point, but she's not narrating from a first-person perspective as a college student. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it worked out. Maybe maybe because it was easier for me to take the voice of a 40-something college professor than a 19-year-old college student. I don't know why that might be, but yeah, I think I would like to think that it works well.
Now, were you in a sorority in college?
I was, and one of my ruder reviews that I got in the book was that I'm so anti-sorority. Really, because I'm still in texting groups with my sorority sisters all the time, and I just talked to my big sister on the phone today, who is my best friend. So I am not anti-sorority if the message in here is that, oh, all that stuff should be fine. No, I am anti-hazing, but that doesn't make me anti-sorority. And so I think that there are many good things that come with Greek life, but just with anything, any topic, there are some red flags sometimes. And students are young and impressionable. And the problem is that mob mentality, this is fine, this is fine. I want to belong. They give it the title of a cheesy Lifetime movie, Dying to Belong. I think Jennifer Love Hewitt was in it. I'm not recommending that movie, I'm just saying. So it's not anti-sorority. I'm not anti-sorority, but I am anti-hazing. I am anti-putting students in harm's way, forcing, drinking, all of those things that endanger college students.
Because it's kind of weird, like the hazing aspect. I was never in a fraternity or anything like that while I was in college, but I knew people who were, and some of the things that they were like, going back to what you were saying, when you go to college, most people, I mean, a lot of people it's a new environment. They're staying in a dorm. They don't know anybody. It's a brand new experience, and you want to be accepted. And a fraternity or a sorority is the best way to get that acceptance. And at that age, you'll do pretty much anything just to get that acceptance, to be a part of a big group. And I guess that's why probably a lot of young people join cults too. But that whole hazing, I don't know about the hazing aspect when it comes to sororities. I know it's huge when it comes to fraternities.
Well, from the research I've done, and I mean, I've done research, and then of course read a ton of articles online, and of course have talked to people about their experiences. And so it's not that what happens in this book does not mirror any one particular experience. It takes aspects from a number of different things. From what I understand, in general, fraternity hazing can be harder and more degrading. But sorority hazing can be really awful too. And what I haven't seen, and I did a bunch of research, and also a bunch of what I think of as like the fun research, which is where to write a book, I like to, even when I'm not writing it, I would like to keep myself in the mindset. And so I like to read books for pleasure that have something to do with a concept that I'm writing about. I like to watch movies about that idea. And so I watched a lot of movies about hazing. I did not find many fiction books that were the kind of book I wanted to read about hazing. There was only one, a sorority by, what do you say her name is? Genevieve Crane? I could totally be, I'm pretty close that's close, or I'm pretty sure that's close. But I wanted to see something that, I wanted to make something that felt like it could be real. And I very much believe that the events of this book could be real.
Now, do you find it interesting too that when we're, I don't say younger, I'm 41, but like, I mean, when we're teenagers, when we're in high school and or college, like those like events that happen in those years, I guess they're our personal years, like they stick with us throughout our lives. Like I know there's some things that happen in high school towards me that when that same individual ever crossed my path, and as an adult, even 20 some years later, I still have an issue with that person.
Yeah. Oh, so you're a
That,
grudge holder like me.
yes, yes. And then that person looking at me like, really? You're still thinking about something that happened when we were 15 years old?
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah.
And even, forgive but don't forget.
Yes.
Yeah. There are some things that I can move on from to an extent, but there are certain things that no, I'm not going to forget this. The whole fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Where sometimes you need to keep your guard up around people, and that's just how it is.
I totally agree. Now, let's jump over to you are a horror scholar, which I think is absolutely awesome. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about your experience.
So, again, what's interesting is that for me, I always loved horror, but then it was just sort of something I only have become a horror writer and scholar really in the last few years because I watched horror movies, I read horror books, I wrote a couple of short stories that never got published, but then only after I started my MFA program, and I was doing all kinds of writing. I was doing fiction, creative nonfiction, and all sorts of different types of fiction. I really experimented. And then I just found myself gravitating back to horror. And it's like, oh, my old friend, but really embracing it. And so part of my MFA program, and I went to Wilkes University. I just finished up this past semester, so I finished my work in January, but I just graduated with MFA in May. So yay,
Right.
it's done. Thanks. But during that process, I needed to analyze a number of horror books, and I wrote a lot of stuff, and I got some essays published. But then the big thing where the reason I feel comfortable saying, well, yeah, I'm a horror scholar. I'm not like the fanciest horror scholar ever, but I did edit this book on horror scholarship, and my name's on the cover, and so I feel like that does make me a horror scholar. I've done some panels at different conferences where I brought other horror scholars together. I am most interested in horror as a creative writer, but this other realm is fun too.
Now, I'm pretty sure, as you know, right now there's so many horror writers, which is amazing, by the way, because with self-publishing, small presses, there's ways for authors that normally wouldn't be able to get the work out there, they're able to get it out there. Now, with you, have you sampled with self-publishing? Have you sampled with small presses? Have you done any of that?
So, something I'm not going to give the name of is a book that I self-published back in 2011. I really did not understand self-publishing. I didn't understand what formatting was. I thought, well, I'm an English teacher at the time. This is pre-college level, and I thought, well, what do I need an editor for? Like, I'm an English teacher. I can do it. I understand now that even if you're an English teacher or an English professor, you still need somebody else reading your work, giving you feedback, making corrections and suggestions. And so for me personally, and I know a lot of people, other horror writer friends who have self-published but have done the work to deliver a quality final product. I cannot say that I did that. So that is why I'm going to leave off. It was not horror. I think it was an okay book.
Okay.
But if nobody ever reads it, that's fine. I'm good with that. Read my new books. I'm much better with that. Now, Darkness There But Something More is published with a small press, Wicked House Publishing. I'm not sure, Travis, if you have interacted with any of my Wicked House brothers and sisters. I know that,
Probably.
Yeah, probably. Probably. But some of the writers in that press, it's a newer press, but it's really taken off. Some of the writers have become very big. We have a couple of Wicked House writers in the Horror Brawl, so that's very exciting. I am not one of those, but I we have a nice community in Wicked House. We're just really supporting each other, giving each other ideas. Some of us have never been published before. Others of them, because it wasn't me, have been published multiple times, and it's so supportive. We have a big group chat, and people always are asking questions and asking for advice, giving advice in a really helpful, supportive community way. Like, I'm going to meet a bunch of people next year at AuthorCon 5, and I just am looking forward to it so much because I consider them friends.
Sweet. And where's AuthorCon 5 next year?
Williamsburg.
Oh, okay. I'll be there. I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was supposed to go this year and something happened, but yeah, I'll be there next year. Oh yeah. By the way, I want to jump back. I had a question that I completely forgot to ask you. So when you got your first book published, Darkness There But Something More,
Mm-hmm.
how amazing was that for you to see that beautiful cover, get to hold it in your hand and flip through the pages? How amazing was that?
It was surreal. It really just, I mean, there were many aspects of this process that I didn't expect, because thinking, of course, the goal is get published, but then there were so many things that I learned afterwards, like, oh, I didn't expect this, and so it is just about a year ago that I went to StokerCon last year in Pittsburgh. And I was driving, well, my husband was driving. I'm horrible at driving. And also, I would not want anybody to think that I was like looking at my phone while I was driving. But we were driving from StokerCon to my creative writing residency in Wilkes-Barre, PA. And I looked at my phone and I see this message from Wicked House Publishing. And it is saying, if your book is available, we want it. And I remember just my physical reaction was very surprising because I just started shaking. And oh, here comes the dog.
Oh.
His name is Gus.
His name's what?
His name's Gus.
Gus. What's up, Gus?
And his initials spell Gus, and his name is Gus. So. Okay, so anyway, he distracted me. But so even from that early stage, everything, now he's rolling around. I feel like
You're fine.
but no, you can't see him. A little bit. I mean, there's
there he goes.
Animal rolling around on the floor that I can't resist. I don't know.
It's so amusing. It is.
Anyway, so going from there to, okay, then eventually we get to the stage with developmental editing and cover design and everything and all the back and forth and talking about, okay, the blurb that goes on the back. It was always sort of anxiety producing, like, oh, I want to get this right and how's this going to go? But yeah, the day that I got that box of books delivered to my door, I mean, my friend Matt called it, he said in advance, he's like, oh, you're Back to the Future moment. Where at the end of Back to the Future, Marty McFly, the successful Marty McFly, gets that box of books, and it's just, And so that was something I really, really was excited about. And just, I had to put it on my bookshelf with all the other S's, and it was really something. So
That's awesome.
yeah, and then I had a big reading that my university hosted for me, and sold a bunch of books and signed my name and wrote comments, and it was like, wow, I'm really doing this. So that's a lot. That's something that I've always wanted, but it was scary a lot of times too. It wasn't always just fun. It was, how's this going to go?
Anxiety, I can imagine.
Yeah. And will people like my book? Because I got some nasty reviews, and I had to read articles about how do I handle nasty reviews. And that helped.
What's the best review you've seen, good or bad? The one that sticks out in your mind that you're like, I remember this one.
Well, definitely the first one that appeared on Amazon the day that the book came out at 6 a.m. So this is my big day, and it was a NetGalley review. And it's my big day. Like, all right, let's go. And 2-star review rounded up from a 1.5, and it just felt like maybe that person could have waited, to be honest. You know?
Yeah.
And then everybody was like, oh my gosh, I saw your review.
Yeah.
Don't say that, it's supposed to be a big day. So that was hard. But,
Yeah.
you know, I got through it and moved on, and it is what it is. Although, you know, like your 15-year-old self, will I remember that review? Yes. Yes, I will.
Oh, I remember my first bad review, and it was a nasty one.
Yeah.
And it was, and the fucked up thing about it was from a more experienced horror creator, and like I have made it a goal, a personal goal, to get more, to become bigger than him. That's always been my it's motivated me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they say about haters.
Yes, they are watching.
Doing it, yeah, and doing it for the haters. One of my students a while ago asked me, he's like, well, why do you want all your names? Like, your name is so long. And I have this whole thing about my name. So, are you familiar with the Crucible?
Yes.
Okay, Arthur Miller. So, I taught the Crucible seriously for like 14 years.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, high school English, 10th grade. So, it was part of the yeah. So, there's this scene near the end where John Proctor has this whole thing, because it is my name, because I do not have another, I have given you my soul, leave me my name. And it's super dramatic, but it is why I have all my names on this book. I've had people say, oh, well, can we just put this, your name's so long, it's going to take up, yeah, it takes up a lot. But it's my name, and that's also a thing about me, which I'm sure some people find annoying, that I will correct people if they call me a nickname, or they say Cassandra, or they say Sakar, and I'm like, and it's awkward sometimes, but also I feel like this is a place where I need to stand up for myself. It is my name. So.
Yeah. Now, okay. By the way, I said it a little bit earlier too. You are a horror writing professor as well.
Yes.
So I have a lot of new horror writers or individuals who are thinking about writing that first horror. What is some advice that you could give them?
Well, one thing that I very much care about when it comes to horror, and I love horror, and again, it's not that I'm anti-trope. Tropes are fun. The name of this scholarship book is No More Haunted Dolls. I actually have 2 different haunted doll stories in my short horror story collection. And they're very different from each other. So my thing is that I'm not saying you have to ignore the tropes. No, because there are certain conventions of the genre. In fact, one of my assignments for my students involves them choosing a trope, doing a project on it, on what have other people done, and then incorporating that same trope into their next short story, and they have to try to transcend it. And so I like tropes, but I like some, and again, I like horror comedy too, but I like something that's not just the same story we've read 100 times. Do something different. Okay, the dog is being very loud. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Itchy back.
We all have pets, so we understand.
Yeah. So I want people to have fun with horror. I want people to write what they want to read. And that's something that took me a long time to figure out about my writing. I wrote a middle grade book. That never got published. I don't read middle grade books. I wrote a YA book. Again, I don't read that stuff. This book, Darkness There Was Something More, is exactly the kind of book I would read. In fact, when I was writing it, I thought, gee, I wish this book was done already. I'd like to find out what happens. Oh man, it's me. I have to. But so that's one of my things. People should write the kind of book that they want to read. And so if you know that you don't like historical fiction, why are you going to try to write a historical fiction book? So I also like to say that with creative writing in general, I teach a different creative writing class too, and then I also teach a lot of composition, freshman comp classes. And I also teach future teachers how to teach writing. So I do a lot of different stuff. I have a lot of preps, which can be hard. But when it comes to creative writing, and in particular horror, I tell students, try this out. What's the worst that can happen if it doesn't work out? If it doesn't work out, try something else. Mm-hmm. And I really like that idea, and I will push them sometimes to just make choices, because we can make choices. The whole thing with, if there are no words on the page, you have nothing. If you have some words on the page, even if they're not very good, well, you can make that better later. You can't make nothing better. You have nothing. There's nothing to work with. And so now that I'm on summer break, I've been really trying to focus on generating more writing. And I'm holding myself to 1,000 words a day with Saturdays off. And sometimes I write more than 1,000. And I saw something recently, somebody put on Facebook, what's the most you ever wrote in a day? I have no idea. But somebody wrote 27,000 words. And that just blows my mind. Yeah. I think my mind would explode. I can't do that. And today, 1,000 words was tough. I got just barely over 1,000. And I was like, okay. And sometimes I'll stop mid-sentence. I'm done.
Yeah.
And move on.
I can imagine, because, the most interviews I've done in one day is 5. And my brain, by the fourth one, my brain was shutting down. I cannot imagine that's equivalent of writing 20. You're doing it all day. You're not taking a break. And I don't think as a creative or a creator, I don't think that you can do that. You have to space it and give it time to breathe.
I can't imagine it. And even when I'm really into my writing and I'm like, this part's so exciting, still, it's work. It's hard. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of like, to me, in a way, writing is like exercise. Mm-hmm. I don't enjoy exercise.
Neither.
I love when it's over. I feel great when it's over. And sometimes that's how I feel about writing. I didn't necessarily, I'm having so much fun. But man, I'm really happy that I can cross off my to-do list that I did my words today.
Yep. Now, last thing I want to cover with you. You do, on Friday the 13th is coming up in September.
Yes.
And you're coming out with, you showed it, an amazing anthology book. Tell us a little bit about that.
So my short horror story collection book is called Keeper of Corpses. That dog was distracting me. I'm very easily distracted by that dog. He's distracted.
You can get tongue by that too. Keeper of Corpses.
So Keeper of Corpses and Other Dark Tales. And it's 27 different short stories. And they are all over the place. And this is what I love about short stories. With a novel, you have to get in that world. You have to make the world, get in it, and stay in it. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes I wasn't able to write for several days or a week or whatever, and you have to go back and remember and be consistent and whatnot. And with short stories, I love how you can get in, mess around, get out, then go back and revise it and be done with it. Mm-hmm. So for me, the process is so very different. And it's also, I don't know that I have it in me. I like zombies. I don't know that I'm going to ever write a zombie novel. I don't know that I can stay in that world for that long. But I wrote a really fun short story about zombies. It's a Zombie 5K, inspired by a real Zombie 5K that I ran. But then these 2 sisters and their husbands run it. And at some point, oh my gosh, we're dealing with actual zombies. And there are parts that are silly. And
I love that.
I have other stories. And, I'm just looking for inspiration in a lot of different places. And so there are some that are just super dark. There are some that are sad. There are one of my goofiest ones is about this guy who thinks that his girlfriend's cat is the reincarnation of her dead husband. And that was just, it's called Not a Cat Guy. And I just had so much fun with that. But then there are also these tales of revenge, like Keeper of Corpses is about this mother who is out for revenge. I have one called Crawl Space, inspired by the crawl space in my basement, which does not have any dead bodies in it.
Are you sure?
Creepy. I really hope
sure,
it
Cassandra? Okay.
I didn't put them there. And so something I put in the back of the book that I hope that readers will think is fun is that I did put a little bit about how each story came into existence. Because all of my stories, something I stress in my horror writing class is that one of the ways that you transcend the tropes is to give it that verisimilitude, to make it feel real. Because if we have something totally out there, like zombies or cats that are reincarnations, it's like, really? Really? And so I like adding in those other elements, like, oh, it's a zombie 5K, but here's this strong relationship between sisters. Or, again, here's, she's going to be the Keeper of Corpses and do some vengeful things, but she has this mother's love for her son who has been wrongfully killed. And so I'm fascinated by this idea of good people doing bad things. And I think that that's a really fun and serious at times theme to play with when it comes to horror. So a lot of different horror, ghosts and cursed objects and zombies and just completely realistic stuff, but every single story has that something real in it.
I'm looking forward to checking this one out. Now, I understand it's on pre-order, right?
Yes, and it's only $2.99, the ebook, and it's with Velix Books. And so there will eventually be, the paperback will be released on September 13th. But yeah, I mean, I think $2.99 is a great price for 27 stories. And you know, the truth is, out of 27 stories, there are some where, you know, you're going to be like, meh, I wasn't super into that one. And that's what makes it fun. You know, like, okay, what's your favorite story out of these? I like the idea of just seeing a sample of a writer's writing.
Mm-hmm.
So this gets really samply. Are there some stories that you would put on side B if it were a cassette? I don't know, maybe. But why not find out for only $2.99?
Now, are there any of these short stories that you would possibly turn into a full story?
I don't think so. I think I would. Now, okay, but here's actually something important. So, Darkness There, but Something More. It's just so handy. I keep grabbing it.
Right there.
This takes place in the fictional Pennsylvania town of Blackthorn. And several of the horror stories in my collection also take place in Blackthorn. And so many of them are linked. So they're not all in Blackthorn, but there are references. And I've also made some, I love the idea of a linked short horror story collection. So there are some characters who are in one story, and then there will be a small reference to them in another story. And so I like this idea of there's a world here.
It's like a universe.
Yes. And my next novel, which I'm working on now, again, only made 1,000 words today. I'm toying with the idea of, does it also take place in Blackthorn? I'm not sure. So far, it hasn't been a big thing about the novel, but I sort of want to. I like the idea.
I think you should.
Maybe running into each other. And it's not that, you couldn't read my short story collection without reading this. No, it's just in the same world. My main character, Martha, is not in any of those short stories. But some of her colleagues are, because they work at the same university.
I like this idea. Listen,
yeah, it's fun.
I'm going to pre-order my copy of your short story on my Kindle. And listen, everybody, get over it. Listen, please, grab your copy, pre-order, And also, Cassandra, where can everyone find you, by the way, on social media?
On social media, on Instagram, at CO Satcher. I had to think about that. And there's also my website, which is all my names, CassandraO'SullivanSatcher.com. No apostrophe. Apparently, you can't get an apostrophe in a URL. Who knew?
You know you cannot.
I was like, what?
And her website will be down in the description box as well. So please click on that. Cassandra, it's been an absolute blast having you on. I look forward to actually meeting you in person at AuthorCon next year in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Yes, and I will not have a barking dog with me. He will be at my sister's house.
Well, make sure you have a couple of copies of your books because I'm a huge book autograph collector, and I will love to purchase one of your books and have you autograph it.
Perfect. I would love to do that.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that is Cassandra O'Sullivan Thatcher. Boom. That was good, right? I was on point? Yep. All right. I'm always worried about messing people's names up. That's why I'm like,
I am too, and so I've been asked, like, oh, will you read the names at graduation? I'm like, no. Because I get so mad when people mispronounce my name, so I don't want to be that guy making somebody so upset on graduation day. So somebody over here who's like, man, I don't care. I mean, maybe the person who's more conscientious should do it, but no, it's too much pressure. I don't want that in my life.
No, it's too much. And because names are becoming so, I want to say, unique now that, you know, it's something that looks like one thing could be something completely different.
It sure could.
So. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and once again, she's Cassandra O'Sullivan Thatcher. We'll see you next time. Take care.